This video is sponsored by Brilliant. Check out the link in the description or stay tuned to learn more. Metro systems can start to feel samey. Dig a tunnel, slap down some rails, and you've got a metro system. But some urban railways are perhaps best defined by their uniqueness, and the Hamburg U-Bahn and S-Bahn systems are distinct not only from others in Europe, but also around the world. Not only in the design of the trains, but also in the network layout and right-of-ways. So let's dive into the rail rapid transit network of this most interesting German port city. Hi there, my name is Reece, and if you enjoy these videos, make sure to like and let me know what city I should explain next in the comments. Hamburg is a city of roughly 2 million in North Germany, with a metro area with more than 5 million people, which is closer to Denmark than to Berlin, and located along the Elbe River. Like Rotterdam, the subject of my last Transit Explained video, Hamburg is a major port city, with much of the city's land south of the North Elbe in particular being dedicated to various yards, docks, and heavy industry. To the north of the main industrial cluster is the Hafen City District, much of which is a newly built urban district which includes an iconic concert hall on the grounds of what were formerly additional port lands and industries. Interestingly, part of the district features historic buildings abutting various docks and canals, including the building that houses the famous miniature Wonderland, which if you haven't heard of it, go Google it and be ready to have your mind blown. To the north of the district is the historic center of the city, where the famous City Hall and the city's main station, or Hauptbahnhof, is located, forming the most important transportation hub in the city and one of the most important in Europe. The station enables connections between continental and northern Europe and is Germany's busiest station, and the second busiest intercity rail station in Europe. Heading due west, downriver and across the city, we come to the Altena area, which plays host to Hamburg's secondary intercity rail station, Hamburg-Altena. Unlike the Hauptbahnhof, which is a through station, Altena is a stub-end terminal, although it'll soon be moved to the site of the current Diepstein S-Bahn station and become a through station. Other notable stations are Dammtor and Hartberg, which receive regular S-Bahn and intercity rail services. North of the historic city center is the Binnenalster, a large artificial lake fed by two rivers from the north, which itself runs into the Elbe via waterways through the core of the city, all contributing to Hamburg's water city status. Further north still, we come to the last major intercity transportation hub in Hamburg, the airport, which is less than 10 kilometers from the city center as the crow flies, quite close in. Diving into the urban rail networks, like most major German cities, Hamburg has both a U-Bahn and S-Bahn system, but in Hamburg's case, you'll often hear the term Hochbahn or elevated railway used to refer to the system, because quite uniquely, it has a large amount of historic elevated tracks in very visible locations. Although the funny thing is that like a lot of modern rapid transit systems, the newer lines really took on the typical U-Bahn format and are mostly at or below grade. The Hamburg U-Bahn really is a unique system though. It's the second oldest in Germany, and with its construction starting in the early 20th century, it's also one of the oldest systems in the world, something you can definitely see in its older structures and stations. The system truly feels distinctive to Hamburg, especially with the iconic silver and red livery seen on most trains. The network itself consists of 3 lines, though they are branded as 4, sort of like Munich, which I have a video on that you can check out after. The original line is today's U3, which forms a loop from central Hamburg through to parts of the city to the north, roughly orbiting the lakes at the center, in a layout that is super reminiscent of the Oslo Metro. The design of this line originally had it branching much further to the northeast and north of the city, and the track connections to allow this are still in place. However, these days, U3 simply operates as a loop with a short tail, as with many other non-circular circular lines. The track connections between U3 and its branches, as well as the train yard at Barmbek, the terminus of the looping service, are crazy and a really impressive piece of railway engineering. And as it turns out, as with many circular rail lines, many services do actually operate in a looping pattern. Of course, the most notable feature of U3 are the numerous legacy metal elevated structures that carry trains and play host to visibly historic stations, particularly along several of Hamburg's waterways. If you're wondering why it's still called the Hochbahn, well, that's because the oft-elevated U3 used to host a lot more of the services on the network, coming in from outlying branches, making its importance greater relative to the other parts of the system, as trains from all over would grace the dramatic elevated tracks. Moving on to U1, you can start to see that transition, as the very long outer branches of the line, built mostly at grade and on embankments akin to a typical S-Bahn, to both the northeast and the north, heading out to suburban and even rural areas, were mostly built for use as branches with the loop. These were transferred over to U1 when its new city center tunnel was built in the mid-20th century, which runs south of U3 in parts of the city center and east of both legs of U3 on the shoulders of the center, connecting more areas directly to the U-Bahn. The U1 connects to the U3 at City Hall Station, and fun fact, the line also has a station which probably has one of the biggest differences in platform width from one end of the station to the other that I think I have ever seen. U2 and U4 are the final two lines on the Hamburg U-Bahn, but in practice they are one line with a branch, not dissimilar from U1. U2 starts in a major housing estate in the east, reminding me of some Berlin U-Bahn lines and Stockholm Metro line. From here, the U2 snakes west, staying mostly above ground upon popping above ground at Billstedt Station, which is built adjacent to a maintenance and storage facility built between the running tracks. U4 services also start here, sharing the tracks with U2. Nearing the city center, the line stops are spaced widely, though it does connect with U3 at Berliner Tor before diverging to the north to serve the Hauptbahnhof at the north end, whereas U1 and U3 have a separate station at the south end. It might not seem all that notable, but it's rather uncommon for so many metro lines to directly serve a city's intercity rail station, much less all of the city's metro lines. Just about a kilometer west of the Hauptbahnhof, after slicing beneath the lake, U2 and U4 diverge, with U2 heading to the northwest with another interchange to U3. There's also a track connection between the lines here, albeit unlike in Munich, it's not used for additional services. The nature of the progressive way the Hamburg U-Bahn was built means that such track connections are plentiful. From here, U2 travels north quite some distance into suburban areas, much like with the branches of U1, albeit mostly underground, passing just west of the airport, whereas the northern branch of U1 passes just to its east. U4, on the other hand, makes a big U-turn after it splits from U2 and strangely goes 3 kilometers under central parts of the city without a stop, including a missed connection with U3 and the S-Bahn to reach the Hafen City area. Within this area, construction was actually done cut and cover, despite being up to 20 meters below ground level, which was possible as the area was undeveloped at the time of construction. This made it possible to build epic stations with super tall ceilings. From here, U4 pops above ground to stop at a modern elevated station abutting the river, with a direct connection to S-Bahn service that continues further south. It is worth adding that cross-platform transfers are also quite plentiful in the system, most notably at the points where U1 and U3 meet, but also where U3 overlaps itself and Berliner Tor between U3, U4, and U2. The trains that run along the various lines are also rather intriguing. Not only do they have the rather unique red and silver color scheme as mentioned before, but they're also quite narrow, at just 2.6 meters wide, while also being quite long, at least for a European metro, at up to 120 meters. The various trains, of which the stunning new DT5s are perhaps the most attractive and comfortable example, are also rather unique in that they generally only have 2 doors per admittedly short car. They've also got a unique wheelset layout, which in the past has shared both the high floor light rail train layout of 3 bogies on an articulated car, and the Stockholm Metro C20 design of triple units with a central car having 2 bogies, and end cars that hang from it. The U-Bahn itself is only half the urban rail transit equation in Hamburg though, and the also rather unique S-Bahn system works in tandem with it to provide excellent rapid transit access across the region. The strangeness of the S-Bahn system begins with its power source. While the Hamburg U-Bahn uses the very standard 750 volts DC in its third rail, the third rail on the Hamburg S-Bahn is electrified at 1200 volts DC, more akin to its sister system in Berlin rather than the system in Munich and many other German cities. And here, the third rail is side contact rather than bottom contact as in Berlin, which is very unusual. Some of the S-Bahn trains can also accept power from overhead wires, as is used on the system's southern branch across the river, a rather new addition to the system and the longest leg of either system, running nearly 30 kilometers to the west of the city center, and also achieving the highest speeds on the network at 140 kilometers per hour, enabled by the overhead wires. By comparison, other parts of the network are speed limited to just 100 km per hour, not much faster than most metros. That being said, that's mostly okay, because unlike in most German cities, the rest of the Hamburg S-Bahn travels about as far from the city center as the U-Bahn's longest legs. Beyond the branch to the south, the system has 4 others. One to the west, which has a very unique alignment at Blankenese, where trains pull into the station and then back out to continue along the line, which is then single-tracked. One to the northwest, which has 2 additional tracks next to it for longer distance services. One to the north, which splits at its end with one half heading west to the airport and the other heading a short distance northeast. This branch travels quite noticeably less far into the suburbs than adjacent U-Bahn branches. And a final one to the southeast of the region. What perhaps makes the system's layout most interesting is how the various branches converge on the center. Hamburg's S-Bahn actually has 2 city center corridors, with one running north of the center above ground east-west from the west of the Hauptbahnhof to Altona from the north, and another running through, or rather under, the center itself, from the west of the Hauptbahnhof to Altona from the south, more or less forming a loop. This means all S-Bahn and U-Bahn services go to the Hauptbahnhof, adding to its centrality as well as its congestion. While connections between the U-Bahn and S-Bahn also happen at Jungfernstieg between U2, U4 and the S-Bahn, Landensbrücken between U3 and the S-Bahn on the southern route, and at Sternschanze between the U3 and S-Bahn on the northern route. Berliner Tor also acts as a hub for S-Bahn services to the southeast and north, connecting them to U2, U3 and U4. Of course, there's also the connection between the terminus of U4 and the southern branch of the S-Bahn on the riverbank. The service pattern on the system is actually rather simple. There are 4 main services, each running every 10 minutes. S3 runs from the end of the southern branch through the cross-city tunnel and to the northwestern branch, while S31 runs a truncated part of the southern branch and along the above-ground cross-city route to Altona. S21 runs a truncated part of the northwestern branch along the above-ground cross-city route and across to the southeastern branch. S1 runs from the western branch to the northern branch via the cross-city tunnel, with trains physically splitting in half at the northern end of the line, as seen on some other S-Bahn services in other German cities like Munich, with one half serving the airport and the other half heading east. There are also 2 additional services that operate Weg only. S2 runs a truncated form of the southeastern branch through the city center tunnel to Altona, while S11 runs from the northeastern end of the northern branch to Blankenese on the western branch. S31 also runs slightly expanded service during peak periods. All of this service means each cross-city route has service roughly every 5 minutes off-peak and roughly every 3 minutes during peak periods. And this is with larger S-Bahn trains that are 3 meters wide and up to 200 meters long in their longest 9-car variants, formed of 3 shorter 3-car train sets. And even more, that service runs 24 hours a day on a reduced schedule on weekends to allow people to go out and enjoy the city's vibrant nightlife. And Hamburg is planning on building even more. Significant S-Bahn expansion is frequently talked about and quite likely at some point given the comparatively low cost and plentiful capacity in the city center, which has only been increased thanks to the automation of train operations, the first for an S-Bahn and something increasingly happening on mainline rail. A new S4 route to the northeast is being built right now, and there are also other expansion plans, including taking over some tracks from the railway AKN, which also operates in the Hamburg region. There's also talk of handing over the northern cross-city route entirely to longer-distance trains and creating a new tunnel for the S-Bahn, as long-distance traffic is expected to increase substantially with the creation of the new Fehmarnbelt Tunnel, which will shorten the distance to Copenhagen and the rest of Northern Europe by rail. That's a project that deserves its own video though, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. Also interesting is the ongoing expansion of the U-Bahn. Right now, an extension to U4 is under construction, which will split it from U2 at its east end, a few stations west of its current terminus, and redirect it northeast with 2 stops. There are also plans in the long term to extend the line from its riverside terminus across the waterway. And then there's the very exciting U5 line, which, like Vienna's U5, will be Hamburg's first fully automated metro line with platform screen doors, with the automation of other lines following suit in the future. U5's under construction first phase will fill one of the biggest remaining rail transit deserts in Hamburg, serving a number of lower income neighborhoods and augmenting U1 while also serving a large and growing business park. Future phases then call for the line to dip down into the city center, continuing the tradition of connecting to Hamburg main station and then heading back north before cutting west once again to provide additional orbital connections. While construction has started on the first phase, it will easily be more than a decade before the full line is complete. Nonetheless, the prospect of even better connections in what is already a really well-connected city is very exciting. So with that, we have the Hamburg U-Bahn and S-Bahn, a fantastic system for a fantastic city. If you've stayed to the end of this video, I'm sure learning is one of the things you actively enjoy doing, whether it's about Hamburg's rapid transit system or other topics like science and technology. It's really easy to gain a greater understanding of the world and find things you encounter in your daily life more interesting by doing a bit of learning every single day, and Brilliant.org can help you do just that. Brilliant is the best way to learn math, computer science, and data science interactively, and it has thousands of lessons in each of these topics, from foundational and advanced math to AI, data science, neural networks, and more, with new lessons added monthly. I have a degree in computer science, and I know a lot of people who watch my channel are in software or engineering, and Brilliant is an awesome solution to not only learn concepts, but to freshen up on concepts you might have not touched for a long time. And better yet, you can even learn on the go on your phone, tablet, or computer, so you can chew on learning that complicated algorithm even on your train commute. I've recently started the Scientific Thinking course, and Brilliant's courses are designed in a way to allow for high-velocity learning, so each guided learning path helps you stay focused and reach your goals faster. It's really engaging to go through this nature as a puzzle lesson, for example, and use my knowledge of physics and engineering in order to make predictions in the real world, using Brilliant's visual, hands-on approach to make even abstract ideas relatable. To try everything Brilliant has to offer free for 30 days, visit brilliant.org/RMTransit or click on the link in the description. The first 200 people who do will get 20% off Brilliant's annual premium subscription, so go to Brilliant right now and start learning. A special thanks to Victor, Theo, Magnus, Martin, and Christian for their footage and insights used to make this video.